The story begins, with the protagonist of the story, the Baskerville family's hound, Victor van Baskerville's head on a guillotine. He was a loyal hound for the family, but he had been sentenced to the guillotine for false charges of associating with the demon clan. As he faced his death, he made a vow that if he were to live again, he would not live as a hound again. Afterwards, Victor woke up in a cradle, disoriented and confused. He thought he might be in hell, as his surroundings were loud and his body felt heavy. It looked like Victor was currently at a nursery as there were many children there, all of them crying. Meanwhile, the Baskerville family patriarch, Hugo Le Baskerville, was inspecting the children's cradle. He roamed around the room and noticed children crying. He dismissed them as insignificant and even referred to them as trash. However, when he approached Victor, he noticed that the child was quieter than the others. Hugo ordered for Victor to be moved to the cradle of swords, and his attendant obeyed without question. As Victor lay in the cradle, he looked up at Hugo with pure hatred in his eyes. He knew that Hugo was the main culprit behind his false charges and subsequent execution. Victor realized that he had been regressed to when he was a baby, and that he had lived his past life as a hound for the Baskerville family. Victor had been born into an illegitimate family and had received training in a poor environment. He had been raised to be a loyal hound, willing to do any dirty work that was required of him in order to make the Baskerville family the best of the 7 families. Victor had stayed loyal to the family and to Hugo because he had wanted to be acknowledged. But his loyalty had ultimately been repaid with a death sentence. The reason behind his execution was simple: he knew too much. Victor swore that he would never live that life again and that he would take his revenge. However, with his newborn body, he knew that he couldn't do anything. Being moved to the cradle of swords was a good opportunity for Victor to become stronger. Children born into the Baskerville family had to go through one trial called the Cradle of Swords. They were thrown into a maze of swords, and after going through that, they had to get to the Styx River to be examined for their talent. The Styx River was a legendary river that turned the bodies of children into iron. He was determined to monopolize the Styx River's blessing for as long as he could. The water seeped deep into his body and bones through his cuts, causing him intense pain. But he knew that he had to endure it for as long as he could. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away from him. Outside the maze, Victor's attendants were shouting for him to come out. They were worried that he would die if he stayed underwater any longer. But Victor was determined to hold on for as long as possible. Meanwhile, Hugo watched with expectation in his eyes. He asked the Baskerville family head butler John Barrymore how much time had passed since Victor had gotten in the river. Barrymore responded that around 7 minutes had passed. Hugo laughed and said that Victor might die. The attendants looked at him with worry, requesting the patriarch Hugo to save Victor. Hugo called out to Victor, telling him that he could come out of the water now. But Victor was too busy absorbing the Styx River water to pay attention. He thought to himself that he couldn't give up this opportunity so easily. He needed to absorb as much as he could until the very end. But then he started to fall down as water entered his mouth. Despite the danger he was in, Victor knew that he needed to endure it. He kept repeating to himself to endure, endure, endure. It looked like Victor was about to drown, but Hugo pulled him out of the water with a smug smile on his face. He commented on how greedy Victor was, even drinking the water from the Styx River. He then noticed that Victor already had teeth, which surprised him. Hugo asked the head butler for Victor's name, and he learned that it was Victor van Baskerville. Hugo smirked and said that a very greedy son had been born to Victor. He was determined to rip his master's head off when the time came, and he would do it with his own hands.